Hey guys, Andy Johnson here again, brand manager of Western Star Trucks, and welcome to another edition of Western Star Tough Talk, a video podcast series that we dedicated solely to the all-new 49X, and more importantly, the people responsible for putting it together and bringing it to market. We've got another lively group today. We've really enjoyed your comments, and we look forward to bringing you another great episode. So without much further ado, let's talk tough. All right, everybody, as promised, we've got another great episode of Tough Talk here today, and this one should prove pretty lively. It is all about the cab and hood systems. So let's get things going. We've got our hosts, Greg Trinan from our marketing group. Greg, how you doing?
Doing great, Andy. How are you?
Fantastic. And special guest, Mike Edge Partington, a.k.a. Dr. Star, all the way in again from Fort Mill.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Always,
it.
my friend. You never disappoint, so please bring it today.
I will.
Well, let's move on to our engineering guest for today. We've got Andy Olson from our hood group.
Hello.
And Scott Wazny. Scott, Andy,
Hi there.
how you doing?
Doing good.
And to their right, a returning guest, my boss and Greg's boss, and always a good time, and sure to keep this lively, as we can see, laughing already, Samantha Parlier.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys, standard Tough Talk rules, no holds barred. Let's get this thing going. Greg, Edge, start it off.
All right. Thank you, Andy. The first thing that comes to my mind, actually, when I joined the team a little more than a year ago, I think one of the first conversations I had with the guys that were bringing this truck to life, I think Scott, we sat in one of those rooms learning. One of the things I wanted to learn more about was the cab and what makes that tough. So can you just kind of talk through kind of from the very beginning? We talked a lot about in some of our videos and some of the other opportunities. You know, this is a purpose-built from the ground up cab, right? It's purpose-built for the vocational market. How did we start from the design process? What were the goals, and how did we get to that point where what we have today?
Yeah, Greg. So, one of the major goals is durability. This truck has to be durable. It has to withstand everything that our customers are going to put it through. So we looked at where we were with the legacy Western Star, where our competitors were, and we wanted to be better than them. So we set that as a high standard right from the beginning. And then we started digging into the design of it to make sure that we're meeting those goals. Everything from the, FEA tools that we have at our disposal, all the new technologies and stamping sheet metal and sheet metal strengths and those sort of things. We looked at very closely and worked on the development and came through with, this beautiful truck that we have here today.
Exactly. And I know we talk a little bit in bringing the best of what Daimler has to offer. And what can you maybe speak to that a little bit and what we brought from that toolkit?
Yeah, well, I'm going to hit a little bit on the manufacturing processes with this truck. And as we all know, the Cascadia, it's Daimler Trucks bread and butter, right? And it's a highly automated manufacturing line, and the precision on it is just top notch, right? So we wanted to bring some of those cues into this product as well. We wanted this product to have the same high level of fit and finish that our current Cascadia has, and we're able to achieve that through some of the automation in the body shop that puts this truck together.
Yeah,
awesome. We don't want it to look pretty, We got to remember the legacy of the Star is mining and logging, so lots of ground and pounding going on there. So what have you done to the cab to get there?
Yeah, so some of the changes that we made was we went through and looked at those areas that do have the most abuse, and we added structural steel reinforcements as needed. And we're testing this vehicle to a high level, a very high standard on a brand new proving ground that we have down in Madras, Oregon. And we've really upped the game there. And when we've seen issues, we've gone through and we've added steel to reinforce the cab to make sure that's going to live to those extreme duty life cycles.
How many miles have you figure you've put on in the testing stage?
Yeah, so on testing now, we have a goal to achieve 100% of life, right? So it's not just an amount of test miles that we put on it at the track, it's how we've correlated the events at the track, the speeds we run the trucks over those events to get to a damage factor that then correlates to the life of the vehicle.
Let's get dorkier than that. I want to talk a little bit about that setting up of that test track experience. Tell us about some of the applications you guys actually took trucks out to, instrumented with, I think, 3-axis accelerometers, if I remember my tools correctly from my engineering days. But tell us, I want to hear some more about those applications so people that weren't part of it really know what you guys put that cab through.
But yeah, from the validation side, I mean, the goal is to put together this package of events that best represents real world conditions. So our validation team went out and they tried to find as many of these damaging events as they could find and string them all together in a way that we can rapidly go through and validate our vehicles on those events.
Well, you talk about the test track, but there's also that big bad shaker down the street here too, isn't it? And probably spent some time there also, right?
Yeah, I love to bring visitors to check out the shaker because, I mean, you walk towards the building and you could literally feel the ground shaking. I mean, that thing is pumping so much energy into the trucks.
I've seen it in action. It's impressive.
It's pretty cool. It helps set that expectation. We bring suppliers in too and show them. It's like, all right, the parts that you're going to build for us for these trucks, this is what we do to them. So,
and half of them probably go, weep, weep, weep. Take off and go, can't do that.
Yeah, but we find the good ones that are willing to step up.
Where'd you see the worst inputs, like what applications? And then where on the cab and on the hood did you see those?
So as far as the worst application, that goes in more of the off-road logging type industry. You know, the logger truck was one that we really focused on to make sure that we were going to be successful there. Now, areas on the cab that were most susceptible to that type of inputs, we have a big windshield opening to optimize the visibility. And to reinforce around that big opening in that cab, that's where the challenge was. And also what we took away from what happened on the legacy Western Star, when that cab was getting into its paces, if you will, out in the field, what is one of the things that failed? Right around the A-pillars. So what did they do? They added steel reinforcement plates to reinforce the old West Star. I'm sure, Ed, you know this very well. So going into this, we wanted to make this cab as durable as hell right out of the box. Yeah, and I guess one thing, you know, little props here that I did bring with me.
Yeah,
I feel like he's trying to get a gold star. I brought a coffee cup.
So this right here, right? This is the A-pillar structure on that cab. I mean, you can just look at this thing. You know, it's a pretty impressive piece of metal right here. Several pieces of metal put together, and you can see the lightweightness in that beefy
arm
structure.
Curl. Let's see an arm curl.
In that structure.
That's it.
This is not doing any lifting.
She has that in her office.
I'm
Perfect sculpting the guns.
Office, right? Tricep workout.
Yeah.
Javelin.
I can't hurt you.
This is not an official part of our validation testing, by the way.
And so that's
This is
four
impromptu.
layers.
Yeah, not only does this part withstand all the durability track, but from the crash impact perspective, there's a new crash loading called a dual A-pillar head that just went live in Europe here a couple years ago. And we actually test our trucks to the highest standard. So we use this dual A-pillar crash. So you have this huge pendulum coming down and smacking this thing, you know, and we ended up passing all these tests. So it's
So that's a test that's not typically run in North America?
no,
That's cool.
it's not a requirement for the North American market.
Or for the on-highway market. So what we're saying here is that we didn't spend the last 6 years designing this truck with just an on-highway cab, right? This is something we actually, again, we talk about purpose-built for vocational.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, absolutely.
of
There's
that.
a lot that's gone into this cab over that period of time, without a doubt.
We talked a lot about the toughness of the cab, but we've done a lot with the hood as well. And I know that that's one of my favorite features as well. We talked a lot, one of the first things, in kind of learning about this truck was the hood and some of the things we did to toughen that up while also making it lighter weight. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, talk about purpose-built. The hoods are brand new. We looked at just the way we went through the whole process. We started out looking at our competitors. We did benchmarking. We tore apart their hoods. We looked at our own products. We looked at a whole suite of materials that were available. Yeah. And we chose the material that we thought was the toughest material available to try and meet the requirements of our customers in these applications. And so what you see here on this hood and others is a new material where the toughness is just incredible. We've done some testing on it that's pretty extreme, and it's amazing how well it's held up.
So what can we tell our friends out in the real world? I don't see any outside air cleaners.
Yeah. So,
and that's probably going to disappoint a few people. So we need to address that.
Well, so this hood has the option for built-in pre-cleaners. So on both sides, you can see the detail on the side of the hood is the side air intake for feeding the engine. And optional on this hood is dual pre-cleaners that go in there into the plenum. Plenum is the region that we talk about that feeds the air into the engine. And then you've got the standard air cleaner that's sitting on top of the engine.
Single air cleaner.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting you bring up the air cleaner. One of the other things we looked at with this hood was trying to improve visibility. And so when we're looking at packaging this thing from the beginning, we look at things like, how tall is that air cleaner? Because that sets up kind of the height across the center of the hood. And then we look at the cooling package. We work with our cooling folks to determine what the proper size is. And then we start to determine what our visibility is. And what we were able to achieve with this hood is best-in-class visibility. So, looking at safety, working in lots, in all those applications, we've achieved these great sight lines over the top of this hood.
And I think I just want to bring up the point here, and that's a perfect illustration of what we did with this truck. We weren't just looking at individual sections of the truck. We were looking at the truck and designing this holistically with vocational customers in mind. So we talk about the improved air cleaner system, but that led into improved visibility as well. So that's something that we talk about. I think our customers are going to be thrilled by.
Mm-hmm. So Andy, we've talked about the hood, the air cleaner, a little bit of this and that.
I think
what
I know
about
where
how are we mounting this hood?
It's funny you mentioned that.
That's not funny. I'm serious.
I have a prop. I think this is Samantha's. Well, I don't want to blow the surprise, but maybe one of her favorite parts on the truck.
Is it?
It's up there.
Is it up there?
It is actually up there. It is one of my favorites, and not, to be honest, I could talk about this part of the truck forever. It's not just my favorite because it looks cool, it's functional, but it shows the intentionality of design behind this product, right? We're making I don't want to steal your thunder. Why don't you start? No, I'm not going to. You start, and then I'll just fix whatever you mess up. And you're doing good so far. So
all right.
Continue on.
So what you're seeing, or what we're talking about, is the Isotech front hood suspension. So the idea behind this, if you think about it, your car has a suspension. The idea behind that is to absorb any of the damaging inputs that go into your car. The hood's no different. So you've got the vehicle suspension, but then at the same time, we have this hood suspension that we've developed. The idea being any of those damaging loads that get through the vehicle suspension into the frame, well, the hood attaches to the frame, and traditionally it can send a pretty significant shock into the hood system. And so what the Isotech does is it isolates the hood from any of those damaging inputs. And the reason we call it low frequency is because we actually can tune this and hit those exact frequencies to isolate the hood from what we've determined to be the most damaging inputs. And it's proven out as we've validated this thing, as we drive around, you can see the difference. If you look at a traditionally suspended hood, you can see that it's very tight to the chassis as it's going and it's racking. You can see the hood kind of pulling and moving. But with this, the hood is literally kind of floating, and it is totally isolated from all those nasty inputs.
The other part that we get a lot of feedback on, Greg, is the drivers are less tired at the end of the day because it's floating in the front. It's not being pulled, and it's more stable to the dash line.
It's almost stark once you're driving around on the. We were spending a lot of time in the quarry this summer, and you look down and you're like, you realize, what am I missing here? And you're missing that rattling
the constant
hood.
hood movement,
and just just reducing that level of stress and fatigue, and seeing that constantly is huge for our operators on the job site.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to the validation folks, because the basis for this idea really came out of working with our friends over in the validation team, and it's probably because of that, because they're used to seeing that hood jump around, and this was a great execution of.
And this is the only hood suspension of this sort in the industry, right?
Yeah, this is patented.
But what about the cab mount as well? I know we did quite a bit there, and that was something driving in the quarry we noticed as well, and not getting shaken up.
Yeah, so the cab mount system on this truck we've redeveloped it, to make it to last that durability life of the truck. So the front cab mounts are there to, again, isolate, those inputs that come from the chassis up into the cab. And we have new front cab mount isolators for the 43N program, that meet the durability targets that we set out for there. And even at the back of the cab, you look at the cab mounts there, we got the airbags and the shocks and so forth. And again, reinforced new bracketry, the way those attach, and all the packaging space underneath the cab with PTO shafts and all these other things we had to work around as well there. So, yeah.
So one of the other things that's sticking out in my mind, you mentioned visibility, Andy, you talked about the hood, but I know that there was a lot of design work in the cab that also added to visibility as well. So we've just hit on all these different points with the operator experience with regards to the hood mount, the cab mount, and now what else did we do in the cab from a visibility perspective?
Yeah, and Andy touched on visibility over the hood, right, and being able to see your surroundings out there on a job site. But even before you get to looking over the hood, you got to look out of the cab, obviously. So we have this large one-piece windshield opening, one of the biggest in the industry, right? So it just kind of opens things up for the drivers inside to see. And the other thing, which I think is really cool, is you look at the back wall.
Yeah.
Right? We have these 3 windows in the back wall right there. So, the driver can look behind his shoulder, toward the center of the truck and look out of a big window. He can look over his, left shoulder on the door side, and there's our little windows over there. So it really gives the option to open up the visibility out of the back of the vehicle.
And
as
honestly,
well.
in spending a lot of time in the trucks this summer, I was surprised at how much you could see over the shoulder with the dump body mounted there. It actually is quite a bit. It's very helpful to be able to see right there over your shoulder behind.
Yeah, and Greg, one more thing I want to point out on those back windows, and we do offer an option for polycarbonate windows.
Yep, that's
so
right.
when you get out in the field and you have rocks flying up off the tires and other things, they're not going to break your tempered glass that we typically would have back there. So that's something new, that we're pretty excited about. It took a lot of development work to make sure that we're going to have, the right coatings on the polycarbonate so that we can bond it to the cab the same way that we bond the glass to the cab, and that it's not going to fade over time with UV and all these other things.
Exactly. We've gotten some social media comments asking, those windows are going to shatter, when they get to the job site. But we have a solution for that. We thought through that, and you talked about intentionality of design, and every aspect of this cab, hood, the whole truck, shows that.
Yeah. So what did you and your teams do back when you were starting this to really get at the customers to understand things like that? Because that's not something, when God bless us on our commute to the Ivory Tower, as Edge likes to say, we're not often, some of us have the good fortune of getting out in the job site more often than others, but your teams, I would guess, engineers generally are not those people that are out in the job site. What did you guys do to help your teams understand the customer perspective?
Yeah, so we had these things called Vocational Engineering Summits, actually. So we had key customers from across the country come out and speak to our engineering community about what were the things that were their pain points in the field. Whether it's the snowplow industry, the refuse industry, the logging industry, they're experiencing not only DTNA trucks, but our competitors' trucks as well. So we said, hey guys, what did you like about the competitor? What do you like about ours? What can we do better as we start to develop? And we're in the midst of developing the next vocational product from DTNA.
Let's talk about hinges. Is there anything different there? Let's talk about the mirrors. Those damn good-looking mirrors on there, and what you've done to be able to hang those on. What can you tell about the door?
Yeah, so the door, and Andy helped me out here with this. The door is, 70-degree door opening, allows for easy ingress, egress. Right, but also from the durability aspect of it, we went through and we go through a door slam cycle test. And for this program, we even upped the bar again. Right, Andy?
It's crazy. I don't even remember
2 million, trillion, billion door slams?
It's a lot of door slams.
It was 230,000.
You know how I was talking about when the shaker's shaking, people know it?
Right.
Well, when our door slam is slamming, I feel bad for anybody that sits nearby because it is just
Yeah, so we went through that rigorous door slam testing, and what do we have to do on the cab side to make sure that the cab can withstand what the door's going through, right? So we went through and we designed larger reinforcement plates behind this big A-pillar that I showed you earlier down lower of it, that these door hinges mount to, just to reinforce. And we tested to make sure that that design is going to withstand this new criteria that we have for the slam.
That's a really good point, though. We're not just designing in a bubble either. You have the hood guy and you have the cab guy, but when we design these components, we're designing them to work with adjacent components. So we really think about the truck as a whole. We think about things in a systems view, so that what if we make the door super stiff and super durable, but if we don't also look at the hinges and the cab and the striker and all the things that the door interfaces with, there's no point to doing one part and not doing the other.
Right.
Yeah, and the mirror falls into that same category, right? I mean, we knew the mirror was going to be on the door. We made that decision so that we're able to maintain that door opening.
Why did you make that decision?
I'm going into it. I'm going into it, Edge, right now.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Whoa,
Pump the brakes, Dr. Scott.
Yeah. Let me put the park brake on.
So, one of the things, if the mirror was going to be mounted on the cowl, it's going to limit your door opening angle, right? So we wanted to be industry best in ingress, right? So that was one of the leading decisions, to put the mirror on the door. And then we understood what the customer's needs were for that mirror. We're designing a new door here. We just needed to know that up front, so that we're able to incorporate the proper reinforcing materials and mounting concepts and all those sort of things into the design.
So these things are rated so you can put your beacon lights and your horn. What else do they put up there? Edge, they put everything up there.
You name it, it goes up there.
Antenna whips, beacon lights,
right.
The spotlight goes up there. So you guys had to figure out all of those requirements across all of the applications.
I think we challenge ourselves to pull-up contests on those mirrors on a regular basis.
Guys
So.
have to pull up there to talk to the driver.
I feel like what I just heard you say was, Dr. Sir, can you do a pull-up?
Nope.
I would like to see you try.
You want to see some Canadian muscle. That's what you want to see.
That's right.
Here we go.
I'll dial 911.
Is this a workplace industry injury? Workplace injury?
One arm. Two.
That counts. We'll count it.
I really hope we got all of that.
Are you okay?
So Greg is right. We show that not only because it's a fun party trick and impressive that Mike Edge can do that, but the other thing is, really, we know that drivers use it. They use it in the field. They use it in a quarry. Someone's pulling up. People stand up and they grab on that. We know it's got to withstand that type of use and abuse. And we left no stone unturned in the design of those mirrors.
I think that's kind of why you saw Scott get a little agitated there. It's because if you give us the requirements, if you tell us what to engineer, one of my mantras is, I love engineering cool stuff, right? I get to do that for a job every day. And I always tell people, if you tell me what you want and you give me the time and you give me the money, we will make it however you want it.
So actually, that's a great segue, Andy, into probably what was my first real heated interaction here in the development of the project, and it's the size of the cab.
Yeah.
So we like how large it is, right? But it has some challenges, right? We
Absolutely.
have in the vocational application, you've got overhead clearances that you have to deal with, whether it's from a crane, going into a hopper. We know, Greg, we talk about some of these hoppers have been around for 50, 100 years.
Right.
Trucks weren't that big then. We can't just get bigger. So I was part of that journey with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, unfortunately, you can't see it probably from this angle, but the unique roof aspect that your team, we gave you a challenge.
Yeah, that was a hell of a challenge right there. You came at us with...
Very nicely. The way that you said that made it sound like I charged you like a bull.
Okay, no,
I don't
you did it
recall
very
charging
nicely,
you like a bull.
Again, it goes back to the requirements.
I sense there was some back and forth going on.
For quite some time, actually.
Quite some time.
And I think that,
That's healthy, though.
And
Yeah,
you
I
go
think
back
so.
through and you look at this entire thing, and we challenge each other, right? And that just makes us better. And we look at all the design over the years working on this product, and I think that's one of my favorite things about it is the way that roof turned out. we had very challenging targets to meet early on with, clearance, ground to top of cab clearance, bottom of frame rail to top of cab clearance. And we kept going back and forth on what's going to be, where are we going to have to compromise in order to meet these. But at the end of the day, we ended up keeping the headroom at or greater from an interior standpoint than where we are today. And we're still able to meet the exterior height requirements on there as well. And we were really worried about it at first. We said, we don't want drivers getting in here like ducking and thinking they're going to have low headroom and, worried about that. But we're actually better than where the legacy Western Star is with this product. Let me tell you one more thing about the roof that's pretty cool is, we had envisioned and we designed it so the boom of a crane can nestle down in there, right? When it's stowed for driving and requirements that way. And one of the other things said, there's going to be cranes up there. There's going to be things above the roof. What if something drops on the roof? What if somebody stands on the roof, gets out of the bucket? That could happen. Yeah. So what do we engineers like to do? We build a truck over here and we go and stand on it and jump up and down on it. And again, non-regulated DTNA test, but something that could realistically happen. Right. And we factored all those sort of things into the design to make sure that.
So you can stand on that roof.
Even a Canadian can stand on that roof.
So one of the things that not only from being able to accommodate those the truck equipment on the trench over the trench style low roof, the marketing plug, but you're also able to mount the things like air horns as well. Something that I'm impressed with as well. I think our customers are really going to appreciate.
Yeah, I actually prefer the styling of it without the visor. I think it looks cool. The styling lines in Andy's beautiful hood actually line up with the trench, and it just has this toughness and this purposefulness about it that it really is a kick-ass look.
Yeah, and Sam, to that point, I mean, the sun visor, although it looks cool sitting up there, it's not a functional piece of the cab. It's not, the driver sits far enough back away from the header area of the windshield where it's not necessary to have that for, sun blocking visibility.
Which you mentioned sitting far back in the cab opening, and we were talking to one of our Detroit technical sales reps. I'm 6'5", he's 6'8", and really mentioned that as being a huge point. Like totally comfortable, totally fit into that cab with no issues getting in and out as well. And that just somebody that tall having no problem getting in and out and having that enough room to be comfortable, I thought is huge.
That's one thing Scott didn't mention, because one of the design choices you could always make, right, is lower the whole roof.
Right.
And we had a lot of conversations about the impact of lowering that whole roof on the door opening and ingress and egress. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we intentionally kept that large door opening. So when you get in with or without your hard hat, if you happen to be 5'2" or 6 something, it was a really intentional decision to keep that door opening that large for ingress and egress. So I noticed you also have some other things you brought with us. You want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the engine tunnel in this cab is stamped from this material called quiet steel. So this is a piece of just standard steel, monolithic steel, right? And you'll hear how this sounds when it hits the ground. Very tinny, very loud, right? Now, this is the engine tunnel in this new truck here. See that?
Unbelievable.
Inherent damping capabilities in it. So,
was there a rubber mat down there?
I think that's one of the first things that when people drive the truck, one of the first things I notice is how quiet that cab is. And that's a big part of it, is having that reduced engine noise getting into the cab. I think once you guys have a chance to drive it, you'll notice right off the bat how quiet it is. You'll be able to have a conversation with your colleague in the next seat.
So tell us a little bit about how you guys sealed. I don't know which one of you is responsible for this or if it's another team, but tell us a little bit about how you created such a quiet, tight cab so that I've never been in a vocational truck that has stayed so clean after 10 hours of driving in the dirt.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes back to some of that fit finish that we talked about earlier. So when we have these highly controlled gaps in between the body panels of the cab, that they're much easier to control with sealant. So we do have a heck of a lot of sealant on that cab. We're very conscious about sealing up, all the body seams. You can even just look at it. You look between the roof and the cab. I mean, there's a seal running around the perimeter of it. There's also a bunch more sealant underneath that you don't see, but that's just one that you can very visually see, and you're like, oh yeah, DTNA really went the extra mile to make sure everything's sealed, and the door seals. I know Andy has a lot of experience with the door seals, and that's another point that that we've learned through iterations of design, that it's a very key aspect that customers see quite regularly. We needed to make sure we hit a home run on that one. One other thing, I want to give a shout out to our interior colleagues on this. We have a whole department called driver comfort systems, right? And there's a lot of insulation and other dampening materials that go into that also add to the experience of the quietness in the cab.
All right, you guys. So I think a round of applause for everybody. I feel like I'm going to be the Grim Reaper of this series. Every time Andy shows up in his sweet COVID hair, it means end of the show. So one last thing, another feature that's ongoing in the series is we ask you guys to pick one feature of the truck that's your favorite and why. And it might be maybe something that you wouldn't be able to see, something that people wouldn't know without being pointed out by someone who was behind the scenes. So let's start with ladies first. Samantha.
You know what really sucks? You're asking me, it's like trying to pick your favorite children. And I have one of my favorite features sitting on the table, which is the Isotech hood suspension, which we talked about, and the other one, which is the low roof. And so I'm not even just saying it because they're sitting here. I think those two really are two of my favorites, and the reason why is exactly what these gentlemen said, right? Give us a challenge, tell us the problem you're trying to solve, and we'll engineer you a solution. And both unique in their own ways, not these guys, the solutions, but great. You are unique as well. But really unique design solutions for common vocational problems, and it's just, it to me just kind of screams like we're serious about the vocational truck market. Bring it on. So I cheated and I went with two.
No, as always, good answer. So Scott, unfortunately, she probably stole yours. So
well,
come up with something new.
I kind of touched on a few of my favorites already throughout the discussion point. The steel reinforcement across the top of the back wall. Obviously, the low roof is one of them. The quiet steel, I'm very passionate about bringing that into the heavy truck market. But something I'm going to hit on, which we don't see here, is actually on our sleeper cabs. We do offer sleeper versions of the 49X, right? And when you do order a tip-out sidewall window in your sleeper compartment, that window is made of insulated glass. And when you order a back window in your short sleeper, that window is also made of insulated glass. And they're just, I think, great features in that sleeper box to keep the noise down, keep the heat out. Again, driver comfort type of stuff, but it's still tough. And the operation of the crank-out window with the little knob we went through, and even down to the final details, we got the production knobs in our hand, and we was like, it just doesn't feel good. I want that customer touch point. So we went and we had it overmolded with rubber. So when you grab it with your hand doesn't slip. It just feels quality. It screams quality when you look at those windows. So hopefully everyone at some point will get a chance to get in the sleeper and open and close that window. And you guys probably have, but I'm pretty proud of that.
All right, so Andy.
There's a couple design elements that people probably wouldn't think about, wouldn't see. There's a little, like a feature for the side turn indicator. I mentioned we work a lot with our mechatronics team on harness routing and stuff like that. So we actually put in a little tunnel so that the wire harness, as it feeds this side turn indicator, has a protected area. So it protects it from splash and spray and road debris and all that kind of stuff.
Ice buildup.
And it also helps, in service, it helps get that harness down there. It's just a little detail, it's a molded hood. It doesn't cost us any extra to put that feature in, but we took the time and thought about putting in those kinds of details. Another hidden one, it's not a published option, but we actually reinforced some areas on the fender so that if you wanted to add tripod mirrors or something like that after the fact, we actually put in a spot. It wasn't something that you guys asked us to do in product definition or anything like that, but it's another thing. It didn't really cost us any extra, so we put that provision in.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, thank you very much. I know those of you who are still with us, I think we've been here for about an hour. It's hard if you don't know how hard it is to talk this long, but I know these guys could talk for hours out more. But please follow us on westernstar.com or on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So remember, long live tough, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.